Hello. Welcome back. It is good to see you. I hope you can hear my voice. And if you're watching, I hope you can see my face. So, whether you are watching live on the broadcast or whether you are watching later on, perhaps on a YouTube channel, or whether you are listening to this on a podcast, I hope you are well. I hope you are enjoying all the wonderfully wet weather that we are currently having as of the time of this filming. Regardless of whether you're enjoying the weather situation that has taken a turn or not, I'm sure the plants are enjoying this well-needed wetness. However, I hope that you are able to remain safe in your home and that you are able to enjoy everything, even though life may be throwing strange things at us. We are about to go into July, a wonderful month in my opinion, and I hope the weather does improve for our own enjoyment. I really do hope it does. But also, lockdown or unlockdown is coming upon us in the coming weeks. Let's hope we can get back to enjoying some of the really wonderful things of ordinary life. Until then, we are jumping straight back in to the Gospel of John. That is why you are here after all, isn't it? So, we looked at Chapter 6 last time. We had it in two parts, and we saw a couple of things. Firstly, the feeding of the 5,000, or it was actually more than that as we looked into, but we actually ended on a kind of sad point, where actually the harsh reality of what Jesus is presenting hits home to people, and a lot of Jesus's followers decide to abandon him at that point. So we're coming in at this point. Jesus is back in his home area, and well, why don't we just jump straight in and see what on earth is happening now that he's had this sort of tragic blow to his following. So those closest to Jesus just have continual faith for him, but of course he's had this big, you could say a stinging blow, but actually Jesus continues. He knows that it doesn't actually matter exactly how many people are following him around. That's not what counts. It's the truth. That's what counts. It's bringing that message to people. So we are going to see how it continues now that the climate perhaps has changed a little bit. But he's back in his home area. Let's jump straight in. Chapter 7, verse 1, and I'll read. So, after this, Jesus went around in Galilee. He did not want to go about in Judea because the Jewish leaders were looking for a way to kill him. But when the Jewish festival of Tabernacles was near, Jesus' brothers said to him, "Leave Galilee and go to Judea, so that your disciples there may see the works you do. No one who wants to become a public figure acts in secret. Since you are doing these things, show yourself to the world." For even his own brothers did not believe in him. So, just a little bit of a tangent here. Firstly, we see he's conversing with his brothers, so we know he must be back in his home neighbourhood. And maybe this comment is a bit backhanded. Leave Galilee, go to Judea. So go back to the countryside where John the Baptist was preaching and all that kind of thing. Go back to the area where you've done miracles before. And go and show yourself off to the world. That's how they phrase it. A sort of, get out of here, man. A sort of, why don't you, you're a bit of an embarrassment. Why don't you go over there? The fact that John the Apostle, when describing this situation, has put that verse 5 in, that even his brother, his own flesh and blood, his siblings didn't believe in him, that they didn't believe that Jesus was the man he said he was. They're possibly just trying to get rid of him. The second thing that's going on is what we have in verse 2, the Festival of Tabernacles. So, what is that? That is something that, actually by some Jewish communities, is still observed today. It is, especially back then, was related to a couple of things, actually. The harvest was incredibly important as it is in any pre-industrial society, and it was very much for people back then. But it also commemorates the Exodus. So again, I'm going to mention the Prince of Egypt. Go and watch it. It's the time when the Jewish people, left Egypt, when they got out of their slavery, and it's used to commemorate that, a sort of like a rebirth, renewal, linking to the harvest idea of bringing in the new crops, that kind of thing. But it was one of the big occasions where Jews all around the regions were expected to travel on a pilgrimage to the temple in Jerusalem. So this event is coming up. This would be a great time for the world, people from loads of different places, to hear the message that Jesus is bringing. And yet his brothers are still kind of saying, nah, go out into the countryside, go to Judea, get out of there. Perhaps they're pretending to be righteous, saying, oh no, they're out to get you, so you've got to run away from them. But actually I would suggest, they just want him to go to a place where actually no one's going to hear him. So, what's the response of this? Let's move on. Verse 6. Therefore Jesus told them, my time is not yet here. For you, any time will do. The world cannot hate you, but it hates me because I testify that its works are evil. You go to the festival. I'm not going up to this festival because my time has not yet fully come. After he had said this, he stayed in Galilee. However, after his brothers had left for the festival, he also went, not publicly, but in secret. Again, I'm just going to make this a little side tangent. He's kind of a bit indirectly speaking very much in truth and authority, but he's saying, look, like there's a time and a place for my death to come. The Pharisees, they're not going to get me even if they're scheming right now. But you guys who kind of want to get rid of me, look, he says any time will do for you because you don't understand the timing of God. And actually, he's still gonna make his way there. He's sort of gonna pretend to stay at home, but actually, in humility, not wanting to get attention, he's gonna secretly make his way to his destination. Because we saw previously how the crowd's going to react to him. They were going to possibly swarm him again, and he doesn't want that. He's acting out of utter humility. So he's going to the festival. Woohoo! Let's carry on at verse 11. Now, at the festival, the Jewish leaders were watching for Jesus and asking, where is he? Among the crowds, there was widespread whispering about him. Some said, he is a good man. Others replied, no, he deceives the people. But no one would say anything publicly about him for fear of the leaders. Not until halfway through the festival did Jesus go up to the temple courts and begin to teach. The Jews there were amazed and asked, how did this man get such learning without having been taught? Jesus answered, my teaching is not my own. It comes from the one who sent me. Anyone who chooses to do the will of God will find out whether my teaching comes from God or whether I speak on my own. Whoever speaks on their own does so to gain personal glory. But he who seeks the glory of the one who sent him as a man of truth, is a man of truth, there is nothing false about him. Has not Moses given you the law? Yet not one of you keeps the law. Why are you trying to kill me? You are demon-possessed, the crowd answered. Who is trying to kill you? So Jesus said to them, I did one miracle, and you were all amazed? Yet because Moses gave you circumcision, though actually it did not come from Moses but from the patriarchs, you circumcise a boy on the Sabbath. Now if a boy can be circumcised on the Sabbath so that the law of Moses may not be broken, why are you angry with me for healing a man's whole body on the Sabbath? Stop judging by mere appearances, but instead judge correctly. Crumbs. So, Jesus makes his way in somewhat secretly. We don't know exactly what that looks like, but he's making his way into Jerusalem, the capital city, and he is beginning to speak to people. Now, he is already well known. If we've already had in the previous chapter crowds of thousands of people flocking to see him, it is understandable as to why people are already talking about him. And we saw there that we had some people with some good things to say, we had some people with some bad things to say, but they're all hush-hush about it. Because Jesus knows, and it seems like everyone knows, that they're out to get him. He's gained sort of like a public infamy, you could say. A lot of mistrust, a lot of misinformation perhaps. Some people still respect him and they want to hear his word. Some people are kind of demonising him. So, a sticky situation to be in. But we can see here up in verse 14, it was about halfway through the festivals that Jesus, I think the first half of the festival, which is a 7-day thing in Jerusalem, and he, I think, was just getting the lay of the land, so to speak, just kind of grasping, what is the social situation here? And he goes up to the temple courts, so pretty flippin' holy place in the heart of the city of Jerusalem, and he begins to teach, and he clearly does so with great knowledge and authority, and the people onlooking know, wait, this is a carpenter's lad? This isn't a scholar, so how did he get all of this? And he basically clarifies, and more so, he is getting across the fact that he is totally of God, sent from God. That he is not just a prophet, in fact, but he's giving inklings to the fact that he is the Son of God. He's not stating it directly. Such a thing would have gotten him executed in public instantaneously. No, he's being very clever about it. He's being very smart about the way he words things. And here in verse 16 we have, my teaching is not my own, it comes from the one who sent me. And so he goes on to give more of an explanation. But basically, we have him speaking into the culture. So here we have these 4 verses where he is clarifying that, okay, there's a lot of hatred for him, and it seemed to be linked back to that point where he healed someone on the Sabbath day. And that any kind of work being done on the Sabbath day is a big no-no in ancient Jewish culture, and still is in a lot of Jewish communities today. But they don't deny the fact that he healed someone. They have to accept the fact that his miracle was real in order for them to be angry with him. And this anger is first and foremost perpetuated by the Jewish leaders, the Pharisees, and yet he's making a point. He's seeing through them. He's seeing their contradiction, that they, for a very, very, very long time, in fact at this point over 1,000 years, have been practicing circumcision. We all know what that physically entails, but for young boys, that it was the sign that they were going to grow up as Jews, and they understood it as from the law of Moses. And actually, that little bit in brackets is a detail. Actually, even a lot of people's understanding at the time was incorrect. It's actually something that goes all the way back to Abraham and Isaac. There's the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac and Jacob, but actually because they were told that they have to circumcise a baby boy 8 days after he's born, or rather on the 8th day, then even if that falls on a Sabbath day, they should still do it, because they still need to keep the law that God gives. And so the people are trying to blame Jesus for doing something on the Sabbath, and he's saying, but you do it all the time. You shouldn't have a problem with me doing this. And in fact, what matters is me healing a whole body of a man. He says that second half of verse 23, why are you angry with me for healing a man's whole body on the Sabbath? So that's why he's saying, look, you've got to stop judging by mere appearances, but judge correctly. So this bears a kind of question: how do we judge correctly? Now we're going to see more of the examples that Jesus is giving here as it pans out, but actually judgment is a real issue for us, I think. We do it all the time. I know I do it. I'm walking down the street, not so much under lockdown, but when I've had to go out for shopping and whatnot, you look at people and you put them in a sort of a category. You think, oh yeah, no, he's a chav. Oh, she's insecure. Oh, no, yeah, single mum. Like we all do it, and it's really kind of stupid, isn't it? And we can work out people are doing it to us all the time, and you know, I know I do it to friends and family as well, you know, and friends and family are probably doing it to me. It's just something that is just a bit of an elephant in the room sometimes. Just this kind of judgment, always labelling people. And we know from this ancient text, therefore, that it's nothing new. It's different now. I think it looks different. You know, fashion changes, and you know, we can still try to judge people on their looks, but maybe in a different sort of social way nowadays. But we have the internet now. We have Instagram and kids using Snapchat. And all those different things, all these different ways that actually perhaps we fish for being judged. We want good judgment, yeah, we'll have lots of that, but we actually get really annoyed when people prejudge us in negative ways. And perhaps there's a righteousness in that, actually, that we actually don't like a sort of unjust judgment, if I can put it like that. When people assume things of us that aren't the case, yeah, I think that's actually, we can be righteously angry about that, because it's false, it's incorrect. And Jesus was angry about it as well, when people seem to be assuming certain things about him, and he's saying to them, you know, look, you're not judging correctly. You've got to sort it out, guys. But actually, what's the remedy? It's something I've been thinking about recently. How do we stop ourselves from doing that? And I think actually a big part of it, and this is not easy by any regard, but actually we just need to see one another how God sees us, as beloved children, as creatives, but much of the time we need to see each other as children of God. I think that's can be very challenging if God isn't part of your philosophy, certainly. And I'm not expecting anyone to just instantly agree with me, but I think there's certainly a good challenge for us as Christians, you know, to do that. We don't do it often enough. I will also point out, and you may have noticed that my bedroom looks a bit messier than normal. It's a bit of a sort out week. It's a bit of that time. So if that's been distracting you, my apologies. If it hasn't been distracting you, well, now I realise it probably will. So my apologies again. But there you go. So we have these issues with judgment, and Jesus is facing them in a very real way, to the point that it could lead to his death. Now, thankfully, most of us are not in that position, where actually the judgment that comes from others could literally lead to our murder, our execution in his instance. But sometimes we sort of act or feel as though it could do. Sometimes the way they look at people react to potential human judgment, it's as if they are trying to avoid some kind of beheading. And actually, there's an element of, we've just got to chill out, guys. We've just got to understand, actually, look, we're all broken, but we're all loved by Jesus. We're all loved by the God who made us. And I do honestly believe once we can get that perspective and see one another like that, then we won't fall into that trap of viewing each other like that. You know, if they understood the truth when they looked at Jesus back then, they wouldn't treat him like that. If they understood what he was going to do, and the guy of love and humility that he really was, they wouldn't put blame on him like they did. But this is in part why we have the Bible. We have these stories that go back over thousands of years, centuries in the past, and they show us where we can learn from people's rights and wrongs. And in this instance, you know, as we are going to see more and more, we're going to see actually how it led to ruin when people treated Jesus and treated other people incorrectly. And we have so much to learn from this. I hope you agree. But for now, let's jump in and see, okay, Jesus is responding to the crowd. How does this develop? So, starting again at verse 25, let's see how the people are now responding to Jesus. At that point, some of the people of Jerusalem began to ask, "Isn't this the man they are trying to kill? Here he is, speaking publicly, and they're not saying a word to him. Have the authorities really concluded that he is the Messiah?" But we know where this man is from. When the Messiah comes, no one will know where he is from. Then Jesus, still teaching in the temple court, cried out, "Yes, you know me, and you know where I am from. I am not here on my own authority, but he who sent me is true. You do not know him, but I know him because I am from him, and he sent me." At this, they tried to seize him, but no one laid a hand on him, because his hour had not yet come. Still, many in the crowd believed in him. They said, "When the Messiah comes, he will perform..." Still, many in the crowd believed in him. They said, "When the Messiah comes, will he perform more signs than this man?" The Pharisees heard the crowd whispering such things about him. Then the chief priests and the Pharisees sent temple guards to arrest him. Jesus says, "I am with you only for a short time, and then I am going to the one who has sent me. You will look for me, but you will not find me. And where I am, you cannot come." The Jews said to one another, "Where does this man intend to go, that we cannot find him? Will he go where our people live scattered among the Greeks and teach the Greeks? What did he mean when he said, 'You will look for me, but you will not find me, and where I am you cannot come'?" On the last and greatest day of the festival, Jesus stood and said in a loud voice, "Let anyone who is thirsty come to me and drink. Whoever believes in me, as Scripture has said, rivers of living water. Whoever believes in me, as Scripture has said, whoever believes in me, as Scripture has said, rivers of living water will flow from within them." By this he meant the Spirit, whom those who believed in him were later to receive. Up to that time the Spirit had not been given, since Jesus had not yet been glorified. On hearing his words, some of the people said, "Surely this man is a prophet." Others said, "He is the Messiah." Still others said, "How can the Messiah come from Galilee? Does not the Scripture say?" Others said, "He is the Messiah." Still others asked, "How can the Messiah come from Galilee? Does not Scripture say that the Messiah will come from David's descendants and from Bethlehem, the town where David lived?" Thus the people were divided because of Jesus. Some wanted to seize him, but no one laid a hand on him. Finally, the temple guards went back to the chief priests and the Pharisees, who asked them, "Why didn't you bring him in?" "No one ever spoke the way this man does," the guards replied. "You mean he has deceived you also?" the Pharisees retorted. "Have any of the rulers or of the Pharisees believed in him?" "No, but this mob that knows nothing of the law. There is a curse upon them." Nicodemus, who had gone to Jesus earlier and who was one of their own number, asked, "Does our law condemn a man without first hearing him to find out what he has been doing?" They replied, "Are you from Galilee too? Look into it, and you will find that a prophet does not come out of Galilee." Then they all went home. Okay, so we got a lot of information to go through there. The people responding to Jesus and his criticism of them, perhaps. But what he does is he kind of relocates himself. As they try to seize him, he gets away. Seems to, again, sort of alluding here to a sort of a miraculous escape. A couple of times now here we've had it simply saying that no one managed to lay a hand upon him. Even the temple guards don't actually succeed in the role they've been sent to do, to arrest him. But actually what we see here at the end of the day, the people and the guards of the temple themselves, they respond to his words. See, what Jesus is doing is he's not just trying to run from the law for the sake of it. He's trying to preserve the message he's bringing. And actually, when the guards return, they actually announce, "Look, we've heard this guy." And they're seeming to suggest that they didn't arrest him in the end, not because they were simply unable to, but because actually eventually they heard his words and they were convinced by him. So at a point where people are really questioning, is this guy for real? Is he really the promised one? This Messiah? Perhaps we're expecting something different. They have lots of questions. The crowd is torn amongst each other. And on the last and greatest day of the festival, as we have here in verse 37, Jesus stood and said in a loud voice, so he's speaking to as many people as possible in one go, "Let anyone who is thirsty come to me and drink. Whoever believes in me, as Scripture has said, rivers of living water will flow from within them." This is the kind of language that no prophet beforehand would ever have used, because he's saying in a metaphorical kind of way that actually the very life force of life of living, the very essence of it, actually, it can be found in him. He is very cleverly putting it across that actually he is the source of life. He is God. Or as we saw in John chapter 1, he is the one through whom all things were made. He is that Logos, the divine order that gives life to all living things, but especially humanity, in creating the universe. That is the situation that Jesus is putting across. He's making it very clear. Now, yes, he's still acting in humility. Yes, he's still being very clever about the way he puts it. But he's not attention-seeking. Yes, he's getting up and he's addressing people. But he's actually not saying, "Look, come and worship me. Come and make me the focus of your life right now." He's saying, "Look, anyone who is in need, I'm your answer. It's about me helping you." But that doesn't happen unless you are told about what's going on, unless you people are informed. In which case, look, you're all here. It's the pinnacle of the festival. What better opportunity for me to stand up and give that announcement, to get the news out there. That's why he's doing this. He's speaking out of love to reach the people. And of course, the writer John has this hindsight and is able to then clarify that what he's talking about is the Spirit. Capital S here, meaning the Spirit of God, the Holy Spirit. And he gets up at this point, and whether people understand the full theological implication of this or not, we're not totally sure. But again, we have, yes, still the crowd don't all agree, but actually you got people saying, yes, surely he's at least a prophet, or actually, yeah, the Messiah. And then some people are questioning, well, okay, so he could be the Messiah, but why does he come from Galilee? Why does he come from this area? We thought it was going to be different. The prophecy said he came from Bethlehem. Of course, if you know the Christmas story, we know that technically, yes, he did come from Bethlehem, but actually he's lived a life of moving around. He's nearly nomadic at this point. And actually, what this shows us is that, yeah, it divides people. And we see this in exactly the same way today, don't we? Some people are on board with like, yeah, it's this Bible, all this Jesus stuff, it's got to be true. I'm giving my life to it. Because if it is true, it demands that. Other people are like, yeah, I like bits of it. I'll take, the bits of the morality that I like. I like the fact that actually we are told to respect one another and to look after people and to do charity. Yeah, I like those bits. I'll take that into my society. But, oh, no, I don't like the bit about sexuality. I want to do that differently. Or, people will pick and choose what parts they do and don't want to have comprehended in their life. And then others will reject it completely, or they'll say, if Jesus, this God thing is real, it will look different because I don't think Jesus is very powerful. God should be powerful, Or how about Zeus and how about all these other gods? They're cool. We all are already divided to begin with. And actually, what we can get from this is that even when Jesus comes and brings his offer, it doesn't guarantee unity, which I think is kind of sad, because I like to think that we could be unified in it. But actually, it's a symptom of a broken world, that we are just kind of divided all the time, which is super sad, a real shame. But actually, it's not about unity in this world. It's about unity in the next world. That's what is offered. It's amazing that actually that it can happen, but I think a lot of the time where we go wrong, it's because we're trying to sort out this world. And actually, if we look forward, that's what is happening. We have this conversation here right at the end. Nicodemus, remember him from chapter 3, he's the one who in the middle of the night went to go and find Jesus. He didn't want people to notice that, yeah, he's one of the big guys, one of the religious leaders, and he, instead of condemning Jesus, he wants to go find out the truth from him. And that's where we had that amazing conversation back in chapter 3. And he is now kind of standing up for Jesus, kind of saying, look, you guys are condemning him way too quickly. You guys are crazy. You can't see yourself as such people of high standing. Look, we've got to do this faithfully. We got to do the proper process of judgment. We have to hear him, because he knows all that these leaders are doing is they're going and sending their guards to go and arrest him without actually listening to this guy properly. They just know he's causing a bit of a nuisance in their mindset, not how they want things to be. That's where the problem starts, is that they've got a very specific human way of doing things that they want to see pan out, and Jesus is coming. And he's coming as God in the flesh, the only one with the authority to lay down the foundations of what human society should really look like. And yet they disagree. They want it on their own terms, and so they get annoyed. And they just can't see the truth. They are so stubborn in their pride, so to speak. And I think that is a pretty good summary of actually what happens a lot of the time in our modern world as well. Whether it's on a big political level when we're talking about national leaders and the United Nations and that sort of thing, it's certainly the case, and we can all think of many instances that we can give as examples for, yeah, there are people out there who just can't seem to see beyond their own nose, that they're just thinking about themselves and their own way of doing things, and they're not taking into account the larger spectrum of what it is to be human in all different facets of society, different classes, different races, different cultures, all the different things that make us up. Now, some leaders, unfortunately, they've got a very single-minded view that forces division in society, but actually we forget sometimes that we see the same sort of situation in ourselves on a very small scale as well. Actually, amongst families, amongst friendship groups, we do see people setting standards that they think are the right way to do it. People becoming unnecessarily offended at things. I know I've certainly been a perpetrator of that crime in the past. I can think of situations where it causes real issues in friendships and families. And it's the root of all the problems. And Jesus is just constantly, despite all this judgment that's coming to him from the crowd, and also we're seeing behind the scenes from the leaders. So yeah, we're seeing it at both the social and the political level. Jesus is just able to cleverly phrase his words, get out of sticky situations, and come back, and keeps on giving the truth, because it's not about judging a person, because that's not our responsibility. Only the Lord can judge. Only God has the authority to judge anything, really. Yes, we have systems of justice, and if as I've been through, you get trained as a teacher, you get trained with the authority to judge situations where teenagers are naughty and that kind of thing. But actually, at the end of the day, all moral judgment is God's, because he's the one who made us. He's the creator. And so Jesus is not making it about judgment. He's making it about the offer he's bringing of water. This metaphorical water, this image that we keep coming back to. There's lots of images about food and drink, aren't there? Oh, man, I love food and drink. But he keeps coming back to what is important. It's not the social situation. It's not the political situation. And that can be a real challenge for us as Christians. I know that I see it in people around me, and including myself, that actually we put politics on a pedestal and we try to glorify that. And it's like, well, actually, look, that's not the life that Jesus led. He actually just loved people. That's what it's all about. I think the most powerful people in our lives and in our society are not necessarily the political leaders. The people that have the greatest influence on other people around them are the people that just love, that just have the purest compassion. Again, I'm thinking of people like Mr. Rogers. Yeah, do go and watch that film, Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. Is absolutely amazing. But people like that who just live to love, and just want to teach through that. It's not people who gain influence through political means or through wealth and power. No. People in our lives. I mean, just think about the people who stay with us in our minds. That grandma who just was the sweetest soul ever, and you just wish she was still around, and she just meant the world to you. Not because she was a queen, but because she just had the purest love for you. All that really loyal mate in school, who just really cared for you, and just really cared for people around him, and you just wish that all your friends could be like that. But most of all, you wish you could be a friend just like that, and love other people. I could give other sort of anecdotal examples, but actually those are the qualities that are most important. We all know it, regardless of our faith, race or creed, regardless of our political stance. We know that love should be the answer, and Jesus is exemplifying that. And what we see in this chapter 7 is him just not getting tied down with all the riffraff. yeah, we're talking about judgment, and it's an issue, but actually, yeah, we see here the perhaps the proof is in the pudding, and in our culture, pudding often comes last, and I think what we see in the Bible is we do see the best saved till last. So maybe the pudding is yet to come, but actually, what Jesus is proving here and keeps coming back to is that he's offering love. He's offering the very essence, the life force of God that brings life and existence to us. That water, that living water, that Spirit, that Holy Spirit. And as we're going to see, as things pan out, more and more details on this are given, more beautiful realities about how this comes and changes the lives of people. We're going to see more and more of that. But the fact of the matter is, unfortunately, the world is still a sticky, grimy, cheeky kind of place. It's a very dark place sometimes, where people just try to do their own thing, just try to exert their will on others as well. What a shame. But we're given a remedy. We're given a way through that. So that's where I want to leave it today. I know it's been a lot to read through. And I've tried to kind of focus in on what the most important thing is there. But that is where we're going to leave it for now. We've got to the end of chapter 7. That means in the text we are now a third of the way through the Gospel of John. Crikey, time has gone quickly, hasn't it? Time flies when you're having fun. There is certainly a lot to be grasped already from what feels like early days in Jesus's life, but we're going to see a lot more to come, a lot more difficult stuff, challenging things, tricky questions to deal with, but some incredible, beautiful realities and conclusions to come to as well. I hope you're looking forward to next time, where we're going to come back to chapter 8. For now, this has been chapter 7. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've got something out of it. And in the questions, in the comments, in the chat, bring your grueling questions. Challenging stuff, difficult things, political stuff in our world, political things in the Bible that we've been looking into. They're all relevant, they're all real. So keep the questions coming. We love to deal with things like this, because unless we deal with these things, they're not a real reality. They're just mental concepts. But they are real. Love is so real. Our lives are so real. Let's grapple with this stuff together. And as the unlockdown pans out, new seasons of life perhaps happening in all of our lives, let's try and do things together. Let's have good community online and grapple with tough stuff together in communion. So until next time, I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope you're staying safe. I hope you're enjoying all the facets of life. And until we come back to this, from me, cheerio.